There's a technical word for this sort of design of kitchen, and it's nothing to do with accessibility. It's usually called a universal design, and that means that it's for universal use. And so it's obviously ideal for me, but for anybody else it's a perfectly normal kitchen to use, and it actually works out very well for my children. So the cabinetry is a little bit different than normal. It uses lowered countertop. The normal countertop height is 36 inches. These are lowered to 34.5 inches, which is not a very big difference, but it's enough of a difference to make them much easier for me to use. The second feature of the cabinets is the larger toe kick area. So underneath the cabinet, I can maneuver the wheelchair so my feet or toes will go underneath without bashing the toes. So one of the problems is that I can't reach the cabinets. So what I did with one of them is made it on a moving track so the cabinet actually lowers down. So I'll show how that works by going over to it. Again, taking advantage of the increased toe kick space so I can get closer to it. There. And here's a cabinet out of reach, but by magically pressing this button, it's a little bit noisy, that's okay. Cabinet's down at a level I can reach. I open the door, and I also had 180-degree hinges fitted there, so I can now reach inside the cabinet, get things out, close the door, and I can move the cabinet out of the way. The next thing I want to talk about is the stovetop. There are two things about it that are different. The first obvious one is that there's nothing underneath it. There is no oven, and so I can get underneath it to be able to control it. I can move my wheelchair controller out of the way like that, get closer, and so work the controls of the stove and stir things in the pan as well. The other thing about it is that this is a type of stovetop called an induction stovetop. They're maybe not so common in this country. They're much more common in Europe. The advantage of it is that it's as fast as gas, probably even faster than gas, and yet the stovetop itself remains just normal temperature. It doesn't get hot. The heating is actually done by the pan rather than the stovetop. So that means that I can be cooking and the stovetop isn't hot. So safety, which was my primary concern, is just an excellent feature of these. They're also just great to use as well. I really recommend them. The other special thing about the dishwasher is that instead of having a door which pulls down and gets in the way of the wheelchair, it's a drawer that pulls out. So let me demonstrate that. I'm getting along to it. I can now pull the drawer out. I can move around a little bit, pull it out completely out, and now I can reach inside the dishwasher, and I could reach into a normal dishwasher. And then I can just close it. The fridge also needed a little bit of attention. The reason is that this is a counter-depth fridge. If it were a normal depth fridge, then that would just get in the way of the wheelchair being able to maneuver. The only difficulty was finding a counter-depth fridge that was less wide than 36 inches. This, I think, is 32 inches, which is just a perfect size for me.